Run it back, Nation. What is good? Sixers sickos. What is good? It is your boy DJ Eastwood. We got some Paul George things we got to talk about. He said some things on his podcast that's alluding to what he wants in his near future, and it clearly ties into, you know, the potential of him coming to Philadelphia or staying in LA, and how he feels about the Clippers team, the James Harden trade, who he wants to play with, what style of game he wants to. There's a lot of things that he said that I want to react to. But first, this is brought to you by BetUS, and I found something so funny on BetUS today. I wasn't even going to do a BetUS sponsor today. I was going to wait till tomorrow or Friday, but I went on the website and I just found something that you need to see. So this is brought to you by BetUS.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Now here's what you're going to do. You're going to click the link in my description. You're going to go over to BetUS. Look, you're going to click on all. You're going to go down to basketball, okay? And you're going to scroll down, and there's NBA draft bets. There's all kinds of stuff that you can bet on the WNBA, whatever you want to do. Under NBA specials, I see B. Simmons. And I say to myself, wait a minute, what? Is that a specific category of bets based around Ben Simmons? And so I check mark it, okay? And I click display selected. And right now on BetUS, you can bet on, will Ben Simmons retire before the start of the 2024-25 season? And yes is a plus 500. No is only a minus 1,000. Will Ben Simmons be a Brooklyn Net? Will Ben Simmons play game 1 of the season? There's all these Ben Simmons bets, dude. That's just so funny to me. And you can bet on the NBA draft coming up and other things, all those types of things. Check out BetUS. Click the link in my description. You get a 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 plus 10% gambler's insurance. Thank you to BetUS for sponsoring the channel. And thank you to BetUS for having an entire Ben Simmons category. Let's get down to bit. Man, that's that. I needed that today, man. I absolutely needed that today. Let's get down to business. So things are coming out a little bit quicker than it seems like I can handle. Like, I'm trying to decide what to cover, what to talk about on the show. And Paul George was on his podcast saying some things. And so instead of just selecting one or two and talking about a specific thing, I just typed Paul George into Twitter. And we'll just go right down the Paul George Twitter timeline and react to the things that were said and the reactions that are now happening. And what we think about it as far as Paul George potentially coming to Philadelphia. So shout out to Sixer Daily. The first thing I have here is Paul George is not looking to chase a championship in free agency. Paul George said on the podcast P Show, I mean, at this point, it's not even about like people saying chasing a championship. It's not that, but it's playing the right style of basketball is what I'm chasing. Now, I can go 2 directions with how I feel about this, because we can go back to Paul George on that Clippers team under Doc Rivers when they lost, and he kind of blamed it on Doc, and he said that Doc Rivers had him playing a J.J. Redick style of basketball. So, you know, you could start to get to the point where you say Paul George, every year he loses, he has a new person to blame or thing to blame it on or excuse to make. And at this point in your career, if you're chasing playing the right style of basketball, you're kind of insinuating that the team that you were just on didn't play the right style of basketball. And it kind of gets to the point where I'm getting a little bit of James Harden vibes, where it's like, if this isn't good enough for you and that wasn't good enough for you and this next thing isn't good enough for you, then maybe it's you. You know, if one person says you're crazy, ignore it. If 10 people say you're crazy, it might be time to start looking in the mirror. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm taking from that. But at the same time, Paul George chasing playing the right style of basketball, does that mean Philly? Does that mean Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid? Does that mean the Clippers? I don't really know what to take from that, but I am starting to get a little bit of like excuse-making type of vibes, or just, I don't know. You're not chasing a championship? Give me your thoughts on that, man. That's interesting, man. Also, he talked about the Orlando Magic a little bit. So Magic fans are also, putting some stuff out that Paul George wants to come to Orlando. And what would you think if Paul George came to Orlando? And he says he's not chasing a championship, or not necessarily chasing a championship, but I think he still is. You know what I mean? I think he still is. Or maybe he's not, man. He's in LA. He's got his podcast. Maybe he just wants to make the most money he can until he's done. His press conference at the end of the season, didn't sound too convincing on like whether he really cared that much or not about winning a championship. So there's all kinds of different ways you can feel about Paul George. I guess at the end of the day, Sixers fans, we just need to say, is this the best third option we can get? And then I think the answer to that is yes. No matter what you think about him wanting to win or whatever. He also had some comments on the Clippers team last year and the James Harden trade. And he said that they missed the glue guys after the trade went down. Just listen to what he said here if you haven't heard it yet.
I mean, the most difficult part about it was, we started the year off rolling. We started the year off hot.
They did start the year off rolling, bro. They were looking really good before that James Harden trade.
Everybody was playing well. There was the energy there that it was kind of like first time like of us all being healthy with Russ now. Like it was like the emergence of what it's like being with Russ now, with myself healthy, Kawhi healthy, and Russ full time here. So it was kind of like a fresh start of what we thought could work. And then we traded to get James, and it's not James' fault of why I think we struggled, but right. I think the lost part of that was that we lost Rocco, we lost Nico.
Right.
Those was our glue guys. Like that was our defenders. And we play small, so they had the length to help us play small.
Right.
So again, it had nothing to do with losing or grabbing James. It was more so losing those guys, KJ Martin as well. Like that was our energy, our young legs. So I think that's kind of where you get to late in the year and we just weren't as good as we could have been. I think losing those guys kind of hurt us. You know what I mean?
Well, Rocco ended up not playing in the playoffs because of his knee, but I do agree with what he's saying. But let me know what you think. Is because that's how I felt about that Clippers team before they made that James Harden trade. That's why I was putting out all the videos saying that James Harden ruined the Clippers, and I was ranting and raving about it and celebrating about it because I thought it was funny. And then they started to get it together, and they started to roll later in the year, and they won like 8, 9, 10 games in a row towards the end of the year, maybe more than that. But is it like NBA players having podcasts? Is it smart for Paul George to be putting stuff like this out into the air? Because obviously people could take your words out of context, and it could be viewed as him saying he didn't like the James Harden trade, and then James Harden could feel a certain type of way about it. Or maybe he plans on leaving the Clippers anyway, and he doesn't care what they think. This is an interesting dynamic, man. This is an interesting thing for him to say. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Paul George is kind of saying we were doing good and then we traded for James Harden. And he's kind of saying he didn't like the James Harden trade if we're really going to be honest about it.
Because, like, Rocco was huge for us. Nico was huge for us. They would go get rebounds. They would block shots. They would, rotate. They were defensive guys. So you plug those guys around myself, Kawhi, Russ. Like, they did a lot of the dirty work.
So you're saying role players matter and teams shouldn't try to put 3 superstars together and trade all of their depth to get that done. That would be the second team in 2 years. A second team, he was in the Sixers, but Brooklyn traded all the role players to get James Harden and 7, count them, first-round draft picks, 4 first and 3 pick swaps. So, yeah, I agree.
And now you grab James, who's a super talented offensively.
Exactly.
Now myself, Kawhi, like we become the dirty guys, and now we have to score too. And
he's saying straight up, We lost defense and hustle when we traded for James Harden, and now me and Kawhi had to become those guys. Because James definitely isn't one of those guys. He said that without saying it, by the way.
It was just, I think a lot that we were trying to balance and manage at that point.
We lost defense and hustle because James Harden doesn't play defense and hustle. I know I'm putting words in his mouth. Pause. But that's what I'm taking from it.
But again, had nothing to do with James. James, I thought, was awesome for us. One of the best passers I played with, one of the best playmakers. The way he just sees the floor and can take care of the ball.
Now he's going to make up for the James Harden talk a little bit at the end.
Not even just the passes he make, but just his ball security. It's just impressive for how much, he's in pick and rolls and in tight spaces. And
that's pretty interesting right there. It kind of sounds to me like, even the way that he's talking about James, he's talking about James as a player. It doesn't sound like he's talking about James as like a friend that he has like a close relationship with. Maybe he doesn't like playing with James Harden, man. You know what I mean? And then he also had comments, and I couldn't find the clip where he made these comments, but he had comments on the James Harden, Daryl Morey situation, and this is where Sixers fans are getting a little nervous about not just Paul George possibly not wanting to come to Philly because of what went down, but what they were predicting last offseason when it went down was that superstars talk, and if you did a superstar dirty, or a former superstar, or a player like James Harden who has a big name in the NBA, if you did a player like that dirty, they're going to talk, and then other players are going to be reluctant to play under you because of what happened, and they don't want to be that guy. Here's what Paul George said. Believe it or not, players talk. Of course they do. Why wouldn't we believe that? And then reputations go around like, hey, man, I don't know about going to this place because they shoot. This was from Keith Pompey. He inserted the word shoot in place of, I'm guessing, shit or fuck maybe. Watch your back. You know what I mean. That's the conversations you have. He said that in a very general context, but kind of sounds like it was him saying him and James had that conversation. And hey, man, this is what this guy did to me in Philly. And if you go to Philly and he promises you this amount of money and you don't sign for it or whatever, I mean, you would have to sign for it. James was in a situation where he agreed to do something based on what he claimed was a promise. And then Daryl Morey didn't deliver the promise because James played like an absolute fat old man in the playoffs. And he said, I was going to give you the money, James. I was going to give it, but you stunk it up. Now I can't give you 4 years. The Sixers fans they don't even want you back next year. I don't want to get into that. I ranted about that all last summer. But what do you guys think, man? Do you think Paul George cares that Daryl Morey went behind James Harden's back, promised him an amount of money, and then backed out on it? I don't think he cares because it's not the same situation. Because if Paul George would decide to sign with the Sixers, he would be signing a max contract. For that to be the same thing, he would have to be like, Daryl would have to be like, hey, man, listen, sign a 1 year, and I promise you after that 1 year, we'll give you a max contract. Of course he's not going to do that because he has a $48 million player option in LA. So it's not the same thing. At the end of the day, if the money's there and the paper's there for you to sign and you're guaranteed the $212 million max contract, why would you even care what Daryl Morey might think 2 years from now or something? You're guaranteed that money. So that's not really the same thing. I don't think that would work. You guys give me your thoughts on that. Is there anything else Paul George said about this Kawhi Leonard jab? Paul George on Stephen A. Smith's Kawhi Leonard jab. I didn't like that moment. Kawhi wants to play. We exhausted a lot of Kawhi this season. At some point, your body breaks you down. I didn't appreciate that moment. I know I laughed because the situation. Oh, he was on when he was on the broadcast with Stephen A. And Stephen A. Talked about Paul George being the only healthy Clipper, or made a joke about Kawhi not being in the playoffs or something. I didn't appreciate that moment. I know I laughed because the situation was lighthearted, but deep down it was like, you got to let that go, Stephen A. All right. Is that all we got? I think that's all we got, man. Give me your thoughts, man, on the Paul George situation, all the things that he said about what he wants this summer. What do you want? What do you want the Sixers to do? What do you want the Sixers to do? Of course, the only real news we've gotten so far is that the Sixers worked out Sam Decker. The offseason is starting out hot, man. It's starting out hot. Let me see if anybody tagged me in anything important, man. I don't think so. Stockton Morrison. Yeah. I got nothing else, man. I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. We'll have some stuff popping up, bro, as we get closer to the NBA draft and free agency and all those types of things. So thanks for tuning in. Sicko Nation, you awesome. Give me a million likes on the video. I'm out.